Assalamualaikum students, how are you? Hope you are doing good. So it is over. We are here with our first lecture from Cambridge IGCSE Physics coursebook, second edition. Before wasting our time, get to the lecture. We have a first unit which is about measurements, making measurements. Do you know that, guys? Is Physics is the mother of all other sciences subjects, and physics is full of its quantities, physical quantities. Physical quantities have their units, physical quantities have their its measurements. We have to make a measurement of the physical quantities. So about all the quantities we will learn in this chapter. Okay, so basically first, from topic 1.1, we have the measuring length and volume. Before starting that, you must have to know that what is length and what is volume. So we got the definition here of length and volume. Volume is the measure of three-dimensional space occupied by a matter or enclosed by a surface measured in a cubic units. So if you have a container, you have to fill that container with any solid object, any liquid object, any sort of gas object. So you have to measure the volume of these matter. You can easily measure the volume of these matters by its three-dimensional space occupied by a matter in that enclosed container. This is the method of measuring volume. This is the basic definition of volume. Measured in cubic units mean meter cube. Okay, now what is length? Length is defined as the straight line distance distance between 2 points along an object. This is the length. We got an example A, B. This is the length of two objects from one point to another. Now we will move to the lecture, unit of measuring length and volume. So in this lecture, they are saying that in this book, they are saying that you can easily measure the length. For example, if you have a straight wire, okay, you want to measure the length of that wire, which is a very simple process. In laboratory, we use a meter rule or any scale that is about a very long scale. You want to measure the length of your charger wire, you want to measure the length of your laptop wire, you can use any scale which contain meters and centimeters. For meter, you want to use huge amount of length. For centimeter, it will convert it to its smallest amount. Okay, so we got how we can measure the length, which is a very familiar subject to you. Okay, this is some more measurement techniques if you want to measure the thickness of one wire. Okay, so you must have to measure length of wire first. Then you have to do a average. Then you have to multiply them. Then you got the answer. Okay, next one is measuring volumes. Basically, there are two types of volume. One is with irregular shape and one with regular shape. For regular shape, you have to measure the length of them. When you multiply length, width and height of the object, which is a regular object, you can get the volume of that object. Okay, in solid. And in liquid, we can say that measuring cylinder can be used. For liquid, you have to measure the volume of the liquid. You can use a measuring cylinders. Okay, measuring cylinders by displacement. How you can measure a displacement by measure a volume by displacement. Select a measuring cylinder that is about 3 or 4 times. This is the basically example of, for example, if you have a container that is filled with the water. The water has its volume, okay, and the object which is irregular, you have to measure the volume of the irregular object. You just have to insert the object inside the water container. The water will rise up, and the water rise up will give you the volume of the irregular object. This is the chart of quantity quantity of length and volume and its units, which start from meter, decimeter, centimeter, millimeter, micrometer, kilometer, and these have their values. You are familiar with them. If you have to convert meter into centimeter, centimeter into meter, you have to multiply, you have to divide. And in volume we have a cubic meter, which is meter cube, and cubic centimeter, centimeter cube, and cubic decimeter, dm cube. Okay, so we got devices from which we can measure the thickness, the radius, the length, and the diameter of the cylindrical objects. Okay, first one is the vernier caliper. So I hope so that you guys are much familiar with the vernier caliper, or I also hope that you might have done a single practical of vernier caliper. Measuring device that consists of a main scale, with a fixed jaw, and the vernier scale which is a moving jaw, which has a moving jaw. Okay, whenever you have to do a measurement, you just have to put a small object inside these jaws and tighten up. Behind the reason to tighten up that the object will not fall, or if it start moving during the practical, it will become difficult for you. Tighten up the object inside the jaws and start the reading. Note the reading on vernier scale, note the reading on main scale, and add the both readings, and you got the thickness of the object. In vernier caliper, this is the method. We have closed the caliper so the jaws and touch tightly but firmly on the sides of the object being measured. So okay, so here we have the structure of vernier caliper. Look at the zero on the vernier scale, read the main scale. Just यहाँ पे आपने थोड़ा सा पॉइंट फोकस करना होता है कि मेन स्केल एंड द वर्नियर स्केल का जीरो कोइंसाइड करने चाहिए. जब वो कोइंसाइड करता है देन यू गॉट द एग्जैक्ट रीडिंग. नाउ लुक एट द वर्नियर स्केल, फाइंड द पॉइंट वेयर वन ऑफ इट्स मार्किंग इज एग्जैक्टली अलाइंड. As I told you, example, you have the thickness of a rod, main scale reading which is 35 millimeter, vernier scale reading which is 0.7, and the thickness of rod. By adding these two readings we got 35.7. Now what is micro screw gauge? Micro screw gauge is the second device which help us to measure measuring the diameter of a thin wires, thickness of a small sheets such as a glasses or plastic. अगर आपको उन दोनों का बेसिक डिफरेंस बताया जाए तो वो कुछ इस तरीके का होता है कि जो आपको वर्नियर कैलिपर है वो आपको डायमीटर निकालने में हेल्प आउट करता है. वो आपको किसी भी ऑब्जेक्ट का डायमीटर एनी थिक ऑब्जेक्ट्स, और जो स्क्रू गेज है वो थिन ऑब्जेक्ट्स के आपको कोई ना कोई जो है इनके मेजरमेंट निकालने में हेल्प आउट करता है. So again, this has two scales. The main scale is on the shaft and the fractional scale is on the rotating barrel. The fractional scale has a 50 divisions so that one complete turn represents 0.50 millimeter. The method is as follows. Turn the barrel until the jaws just tighten on the object. Using the friction clutch ensures just the right pressure. Read the main scale to the nearest 0.5 millimeter. आपने मेन स्केल के रीडिंग कहाँ से स्टार्ट करनी है? टू द नियरेस्ट पॉइंट विच इज 0.5 millimeter. रीड द एडिशनल फ्रैक्शन ऑफ अ millimeter फ्रॉम द फ्रैक्शनल स्केल. एंड द लास्ट पार्ट इज, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, आपके पास मेन स्केल रीडिंग आ गई 2.5, फ्रैक्शनल स्केल रीडिंग दैट इज अ मूवेबल स्केल विच इज अबाउट 0.7. By adding them you got the thickness of a rod by using micrometer screw gauge. So we are done here with our first lecture from our physics book. Okay, अगर आपको कोई भी confusion है, कोई भी query है, let me know in comments. So we will meet in our next class with our next lecture. Until that, Allah Hafiz.